Sky Hansen, she goes by Sky, lived in a Minnetonka apartment when sheriff's deputies arrived.
I'm scared.
Armed
What?
with an eviction order.
America, while Tim Walz is begging the federal government to pay for damages in Minnesota, let me show you who's actually paying the price for his fraud crisis. That woman that you just saw, she's autistic, and she was living in a Medicaid-funded apartment with caregivers who were supposed to help her. Instead, they billed Medicaid $421 per day while providing her maybe 2 hours of service. And when the fraud got exposed, the company stopped paying rent. She got evicted and has been homeless for 8 months.
The federal government needs to pay for what they broke here. The federal government needs to be responsible. You don't get to break things and then just leave.
The federal government is now the bad guy, finally investigating the $1 million fraud scheme that Walz let run wild in his state.
Across the nation, potentially $100 billion. That's a massive amount of fraud, obviously.
And instead of taking responsibility, Walz wants you to pay for it. Meanwhile, his attorney general, Ellison, just testified under oath that fraud, not a serious thing. $185 million stolen, vulnerable people evicted, and it's not serious.
Hey kids, unlock endless fun with the Quality Learning Center playset. Open your own center and watch millions in Magic State funding pour in, even with no kids around.
The truck never stops.
From our empty classrooms to luxury bonus rides, it's Minnesota Magic up to $4 million easy.
I got $4 million this year.
My center's super.
What is up, guys? Tyson DeLaCruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. This is about vulnerable people whose their lives got destroyed while Timmy Tampon Walz just happened to look the other way.
Sky Hansen, she goes by Sky, lived in a Minnetonka apartment when sheriff's deputies arrived.
I'm scared.
Armed
What?
with an eviction order for Jane or John Doe.
But I'm not Jane or John Doe. That's what's confusing.
Sky lived here as part of a Medicaid program called Integrated Community Supports, or ICS. It's designed to help adults with disabilities live independently in their own apartment with one-to-one daily assistance. She was ordered to pack up what she could carry.
Grab what you've just packed because we need to exit the apartment now.
And get out.
We need to go. Come on.
Okay.
We need to go.
Let's go.
How are you?
Go.
Okay, sorry.
Set out to the hallway.
And like that, a vulnerable young woman put on the street.
Sky lived in that apartment as part of a Medicaid program called Integrated Community Supports, ICS. It is designed to help adults with disabilities live independently with one-on-one daily assistance. Honestly, it is a beautiful program in theory, but here's what actually happened.
Her former caregivers, American Home Healthcare LLC, are under investigation for fraud. They were billing Sky's Medicaid $421 per day, claiming they always provided 12 hours of service.
Most days was like 2 hours, maybe 1 or 2 hours.
American Home Healthcare was billing Sky's Medicaid, get this, $420 per day, claiming they provided 12 hours of service. Most days, 1 to 2 hours max. So they were stealing roughly $300 a day from taxpayers, while this vulnerable woman wasn't able to get the care that she actually needed.
Under investigation, the company and its owner, Jamal Mohammed, stopped paying rent. So Sky got evicted.
Okay, let's go. Come on. Here you go. Push this.
Just one of the vulnerable people paying the price through no fault of their own for Minnesota's fraud crisis. Thrown onto the street, homeless.
They say that your home is in your heart.
They didn't care about Sky. They didn't care that she'd be evicted. They stopped paying rent and just disappeared like a genie on their last wish. And Sky has been homeless for 8 months, living out of her car, living in tents, living in shelters, cheap motels. She even got kicked out of the motel for being, quote unquote, too autistic. This chat is the human cost of fraud, and the fraud that Tim Walz calls not a serious thing. This is what happens when you let criminal organizations masquerade as healthcare providers for years without oversight.
This is much bigger than just the money that's being stolen. When you're willing to steal someone's life, as well, that's when I really get upset. And what we're seeing in many of these areas, and I'll speak to Maine for a second, you have the ability and the accusations, and there has been some OIG investigations that have been ongoing. It was a report filed 10 days ago to validate these. But essentially, in Maine, and this is sort of a cousin to what's going on in Minnesota, similar patterns, local communities sort of owning this problem, taking advantage of the system, folks not policing it from the outside, embarrassment about the fact it's sort of awkward discussion.
Dr. Oz nailed it. This is much bigger than money. When you're willing to steal somebody's life, that's when it becomes unforgivable. He identified the pattern here. Local communities owning the problem, folks not policing it from outside, embarrassment about the awkward discussion because you might be accused of what the Democrats call racism for you investigating the situation. So vulnerable people like Sky get sacrificed at the altar for political correctness, while fraudsters pocket and steal billions and billions of dollars. Now, let me show you just how massive Minnesota's fraud problem really is here, because what happened to Sky is not an isolated incident. This is systematic threat enabled by government, absolute government incompetence here.
And in that setting, there's an ability for fraudsters to actually go into the person's house and take over the house, essentially, put them in a closet or put them in a corner, and then not give them the care they need, not give them the food, not nurture them, not monitor them. There have been accusations that police are finding some of these folks outside the home.
Dr. Oz testified that fraudsters are literally taking over people's homes, putting them in closets or corners, not giving them food, not monitoring them. Police have found some of these vulnerable adults wandering outside. We covered a story a few months ago about an individual who froze to death. And when they take them back home, there is no one there taking care of them. This is happening in Minnesota right now. It's happening in Maryland right now, while Walz demands federal money. Can you believe the audacity here, guys?
Well, one possibility, and we know this is happening in Minnesota, is that you have parents being bribed, being given money in order to dishonestly claim their children have autism. Now, here's the concern. If there's one child in the neighborhood with autism, we have services to go take care of that child. There's money that goes to that family. But if every kid in the neighborhood claims they're autistic because their parents say they are, then now you've got no one in the neighborhood actually getting appropriate autism services.
And for those of you that have not been following the situation, let me explain to you how this scam works. Parents are being bribed to dishonestly claim that their children have autism. If there's one child in the neighborhood with autism, services go to that family. But if every kid in the neighborhood claims they're autistic because their parents are getting paid to lie, then no one gets appropriate care and services. The money gets so diluted and watered down, the fraud gets normalized, and the system absolutely collapses. California has a $3.5 billion fraud problem in Los Angeles alone. There's been a 7-fold increase in hospice services, which is impossible unless you believe 1/3 of all Americans are dying and are dying in Los Angeles. The fraud here is so blatant that it's absolutely almost comical, except it's not funny because it bankrupts the system's ability to care for people who actually need help.
By national law, it's a federal law, if you sign someone up for Medicaid, you also have to offer them voting services. Now, on the face value, that sounds like a reasonable thing to do, but it allows political patronage to be potentially one of the reasons why these state leaders did not pursue fraud.
So there is a built-in incentive for political gain. Sign up for fraudulent Medicaid requirements, register them to vote, and suddenly you've got a voter base. You got a voter base that depends on you not to investigate the fraud. This is why, my friends, state leaders did not pursue fraud when it was brazenly evident in these states, because the fraud was feeding their political machine.
It's the Somali Cash Suitcase playset from Real Rigs. Just load up those totally normal suitcases, give the crank a good twist, and boom! Millions explode everywhere while the aunties pull off the smoothest getaway since the daycare. Sambusas for the flight, confetti to cover the tracks, and authentic wedding music to drown out the sirens. Everything you need for the ultimate homecoming adventure. And boom!
The federal government needs to pay for what they broke here. There are going to be accountability on the things that happen, but one of the things is the incredible and immense costs that were borne by the people of this state. The federal government needs to be responsible. You don't get to break things and then just leave without doing something about it.
You broke it. No, Tim. You broke it. You let fraudsters run wild in your state for years. You ignored whistleblowers or retaliated against them. You created a system where vulnerable people like Sky get evicted while criminals steal billions. The federal government didn't break to Minnesota. The federal government finally investigated Minnesota. And now they're mad because they find out exactly what everybody knew what was happening over there.
So we're going to be asking the federal delegation to be investing and doing the things necessary.
You mean the cost of your fraud crisis, Timmy Tampon Walz? The cost of your incompetence? The cost of your political machine that prioritized voter registration over fraud prevention? And now, all of a sudden, guys, Timmy Tampon Walz wants the federal delegation to invest in Minnesota. That's a nice word, my friends, for give us more money. Can I have some more, sir? I need the money. I need the money.
Minnesota and a coalition of 4 other states have been in a legal battle with the federal government over access to federal funding for child care and family assistance programs. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services had threatened in late December to freeze access to funding. Then in January, specifying a total amount of roughly $10 billion impacting 5 states, including Minnesota. Federal officials cited allegations of fraud in Minnesota as a reason why they're cutting off funding. HHS's Administration for Children and Families requested the states submit proof of legitimate spending.
And here's what's actually happening. The Department of Human Health and Services threatened to freeze $10 billion in funding to 5 states. One of them, obviously, being Minnesota because of the fraud allegations. They asked Minnesota to submit proof of legitimate spending. Just show some receipts. Just show some receipts, my friends. Just prove the money went to where it was supposed to go. And Minnesota's response? Sue the federal government. Don't provide receipts. Don't prove spending was legitimate. Just sue and claim that you're being prosecuted. Now, let me connect the dots for you, because what's happening in Minnesota is directly tied to what's happening in Washington right now with DHS shutdown and the SAVE Act.
Right now, there is still intense debate on Capitol Hill over funding for the Department of Homeland Security. There's going to be a lapse in funding by midnight Friday if a deal is not reached between Democrats and Republicans. Our Scripps News Group's Joe St. George live with us this morning. Now, Joe, what would be the impact of a shutdown like this for DHS? Where do we stand on this?
For those of you that aren't familiar with it, let me bring you up to speed. The Department of Homeland Security is facing a shutdown by midnight Friday if Democrats and Republicans can't reach to a particular deal. DHS is the 3rd largest cabinet department with 260,000 employees. This includes the Coast Guard, TSA, FEMA, Secret Services, and Immigration Enforcement.
These are 47. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative. The motion is not agreed to.
Mr. President.
Recognize the majority leader.
I enter a motion to reconsider.
And recently, the Senate just failed to advance the DHS funding bill. The vote was 52-47, not enough to overcome the filibuster. Fetterman was one of the lone Democrats to vote in that particular favor. So DHS will likely shut down by Friday night. But here's what Democrats don't want you to know. ICE is fully funded for the entire year through Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, the BBB, not to be confused with a BBL.
And Brett, there's just no possible way to reach some sort of a last-second deal here, as most of Congress has already left town and they're going to be gone through next week. Many of them are actually at a bipartisan conference in Germany right now. So tonight at midnight, DHS and its 260,000 employees will be shutting down once again, and it could remain shut down through President Trump's State of the Union address on February 24th.
So when they shut down DHS, they're not shutting down immigration enforcement. They're shutting down the Coast Guard, TSA, which means longer lines at the airport, cybersecurity agencies, and disaster response. They're putting our country at risk for pure political theater.
Lawmakers a step closer to securing federal elections. Last night, the House did officially pass the Save America Act, which would require proof of citizenship to register and a photo ID to vote.
Ensuring the integrity of elections is an essential issue. It's essential to maintaining our constitutional republic, and everybody in this country seems to understand and agree to that. This is about a 90-10 issue in the polling, because all that we've done tonight in this simple piece of legislation is apply common sense.
Now, here's why this matters. The House just passed what's called the SAVE Act. Get this, requiring photo ID and proof of citizenship to register to vote. Common sense, right? The speaker said it perfectly. This is a 90-10 issue in polling because all we've done is apply common sense. But Democrats are going to potentially block it in the Senate. Why? Because the fraud in Minnesota and the voter registration tied to Medicaid enrollment are connected. They're intertwined. If you require proof of citizenship to vote, you can't register fraudulent Medicaid recipients to vote. The whole scam just falls apart here.
What voting rights is he taking away from black voters?
Oh, if we look at
the SAVE Act?
The SAVE Act, that's exactly what we're talking about.
How?
That is
How
actually going to continue to
How?
disenfranchise
How?
overwhelmingly a lot of people of color.
How?
There are so many civil rights organizations that have run the data. If we look at the way that it is going to disenfranchise black voters, it's the same reason why Chuck Schumer called it Jim Crow 2.0.
So,
this is the same president. If we want to continue...
You haven't said how yet.
I am talking about it. It's the way that you're putting new poll taxes on this when you're making people have... That's what we can call them now. It's kind of an idiom, right? If you want to say that people have to prove that they are citizens, that they have to prove with a voter ID, the reality is you're layering what is a constitutional right for the American people and making it harder for people to vote in this country, and it's going to disenfranchise black voters.
Concern you that you're making all these claims, you've yet to lay out how it...
And watch what happens when Scott Jennings asks Democrats to explain how voter ID disenfranchises black voters. It's always the thing. Something comes up, it's black voters. She can't answer. She just repeats talking points. She just repeats talking points about organizations ran the data and Chuck Schumer called it Jim Crow 2.0. Racism's been gone for a long time. It's no longer a race thing, guys. It is a class thing, but she can't actually explain that.
76% of black voters think we should show an ID to vote. 80% of Hispanic voters, 83% of the American people. Are you saying that black voters
The
are
SAVE
too
Act
dumb to
isn't
know
just,
what's good for them? I mean,
the
it
SAVE Act
sounds
isn't
pretty,
just about
it sounds pretty condescending to me.
And when Jennings delivers the knockout blow, 76% of black voters think they should show ID to vote. Are you saying black voters don't know what's good for them? Feels pretty condescending to me. That is on the money because that's exactly what Democrats are saying. They're claiming that voter ID is racist while 76% of black voters support it. They're the ones being condescending. They're the ones assuming black Americans are too incompetent to get an ID. I'm about to lay it all down for those that don't understand. The real reason Democrats oppose voter ID is because it would expose the fraud. It would end Medicaid to the voter pipeline. It would shut down the scam that Tim Walz desperately is trying to protect. Who are they going to pander to then? Now let's talk about Minnesota's AG Keith Ellison because his testimony before Congress is probably one of the most infuriating things that you'll ever see.
General Ellison, under your watch, unfortunately, Minnesota has achieved the largest COVID fraud scheme in American history. Under your watch, those whistleblowers who brought attention to the fraud and waste in your state faced retaliation. Under your watch, billions of tax dollars intended for unemployment insurance, supporting hungry children, just as described, children with autism, providing housing for the most vulnerable, keeping small businesses afloat through COVID, and more were instead, all of those dollars were funneled away into fraudulent schemes. So last month in an interview with CNN, you were asked if your office has done enough to stop the fraud. And you responded, of course we've done enough. And this is a quote, of course we've done enough. And we're doing more every single day. This is a political matter. This is not a serious thing. Those are your words.
They are. Happening under his watch. Whistleblowers who expose the fraud face retaliation. Billions of tax dollars intended for hungry children, autistic kids, unemployment insurance, and small businesses were funneled into fraudulent schemes. And when asked Ellison if his office has done enough to stop the fraud, of course we've done enough. This is a political matter. this is not a serious thing. Not a serious thing. Billions of dollars stolen, vulnerable people evicted, child services stolen from, and it's not a serious thing, guys. Don't worry about it, guys. It's not that serious.
The $9 billion in historic fraud out of your state, including the $250 million in the Feeding Our Future program alone. You familiar with that? Don't turn to the pages in your book to get your potted answers. Are you familiar with it? Yes or no?
And now Senator Josh Hawley is pushing for criminal indictment against the AG. Because here's what's happening. The people who ran the Feeding Our Future program, you guys remember that, came to the AG's office in December 2021. They complained about state investigators going after them, and the AG agreed to help them. It's all on tape, every single sentence. Ellison told them to send him the names of the investigators. He deliberately helped fraudsters avoid investigation. And then 9 days later, he took $10,000 from them.
Why'd you take their money? Why'd you take their money?
I didn't.
You took $10,000.
No, that's a false statement.
$10,000 9 days after the meeting.
False statement.
You took $10,000. Here's what happened. They went to your office. They solicited money from you. They solicited help from you.
That's also wrong.
They came to your office. It was your official office. You met with them for 54 minutes.
No, they didn't.
They asked you for help. You pledged it to them, and they talked repeatedly about money. In fact, it's all they talked about.
That's a lie.
Money, 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 money. They said, we will put our dollars in the right place. We will support candidates that will fight to protect our interests. You replied, that's right. They said, if you are securing your donor base and securing your power base, you can act the way you want. You replied, money is freedom. They said the amount of money circulating, I'm reading the transcript, the amount of money circulating in our community today is powerful, and we haven't realizing it in a meaningful way. And you said, give me the specifics. And 9 days later, you took $10,000 from people who were then indicted. It's in your reports. Why'd you do it?
Sir,
was it worth it?
You know what? This is a theatrical performance.
10,000. This is the truth. This is what accountability looks like, of which you've had none. You helped fraudsters defraud your state and this government of $9 billion, and you got a fat campaign contribution out of it. You ought to be indicted.
Ellison's response, he says it's a lie. What do you guys think?
The chief law enforcement officer of Minnesota, be concerned about people obstructing justice. So, putting their cars in streets, blocking roads. I would think as chief law enforcement, you would be concerned about that, but were you ever concerned about encouraging, I guess, people to support you to go out and put themselves into harm's way?
No, we never.
Impeding and obstructing illegal law enforcement action. Did that ever concern you?
Sir, that never happened. We all times said, if you want to protest, protest peacefully, protest safely. But you'll never find me being against the First Amendment
right now. But
I'll always be for the First Amendment.
But you were seeing the scuffles, right? You were seeing Minneapolis police officials could not help protect ICE officials, right? I mean, Representative Niska, isn't that when you're talking about the nullification of federal law? Isn't that one of the Hennepin County that they simply could not help and protect ICE in their legal law enforcement actions?
And it gets worse, guys. Senator Ron Johnson grilled Ellison about deploying leftist aggregators against federal agents. The AG Ellison knew about the signal chats where activists were being trained to obstruct ICE operations. He encouraged people to protest, knowing that there's going to be some scuffles here and there. And when Minneapolis police couldn't protect ICE agents, he did nothing. This is the chief law enforcement officer of Minnesota, and he's actively working against federal law enforcement while protecting fraudsters who stole millions and millions of dollars from taxpayers. Now, let me show you what actual leadership looks like, because while the Democrats are protecting fraud and blocking voter ID, President Trump just launched a program that's going to save Americans billions of dollars on prescription drugs.
A major announcement by President Trump proclaiming that Trump RX website is officially live.
This launch represents the largest reduction in prescription drug prices in history by
many times, and it's not even close. You're going to see numbers that you're not going to believe.
Trump just announced that Trump RX is officially live. He called it the largest reduction in prescription drug prices in history by many times. Many times. And it's not even close.
4 in 10 Americans experience medication insecurity, which means that they're not able to afford a prescription. Sometimes they have to, not take a medicine, or they have to split doses just to save money. And that's a problem. And this is why it's so critical and important that President Trump and his administration are tackling this.
Here's how it works. The site is a direct-to-consumer marketplace that points patients to drug makers offering particular discounts. You get Trump RX coupons to use at your local pharmacy. 16 companies have made agreements with the White House, and it's designed for people willing to pay cash instead of going through insurance, because we all know insurance is an absolute scam. Now, critics will say this only helps 8% of Americans who are uninsured, but here's what they're missing.
How is this going to help lower prescription drug costs for everybody eventually, including those who have insurance?
So let's take a couple of specific examples. Let's take the weight loss drug, right? The GLP-1 medications.
Well, that's in a lot of cases not covered.
Exactly. That's often not covered by your insurance. Even like here at CNN, I don't know if you're covered, but there's about a 50-50 chance you're not for all your employees. And so if you're covered with insurance for the GLP-1 drugs, you're going to use that insurance because it's less expensive to you. But the employer, CNN, will look to see that the price on the website's lower than what they're actually getting from the middleman.
Dr. Oz explained it perfectly. When employers see that cash price on Trump RX is particularly lower than what they're paying through insurance, middlemen, and all that crap, they're going to demand better prices. The insurance companies and pharmacy benefit managers have been ripping off employers for years, which he's absolutely right on that. Now there's price transparency, and the whole scam gets exposed.
They're going to say, I don't want that. I want the better price. Yeah. And you, Dan, if you desire, because you don't have the insurance for whatever reason, to buy it on your own, you can buy it for a price now. It's about $150. By the way, there's a weight loss pill now, not just an injection. You can now get that pill for $150 bucks.
That, my friends, is an absolute game changer for millions and millions of Americans struggling with obesity.
The association says there are major unknowns about how pharmacies will be reimbursed under Trump RX. While patients may pay as little as $199 for medications like Ozempic, pharmacies still have to purchase these drugs at their regular wholesale cost, which can be more than $1,000.
It has rolled out, it lists prices that a pharmacy would be paid. It also lists a price that a patient will pay potentially at a retail pharmacy on the drugs that are available, but there is nothing yet known by most pharmacies how the difference will be paid to the pharmacy.
Now, some pharmacies are concerned about how they'll be reimbursed. They're worried about the gap between what the patient pays and the drug cost from the wholesaler. But that's actually the point here. The current system is absolutely broken. Pharmacy benefit managers are taking massive cuts, while pharmacists and patients get squeezed to death. Trump RX forces transparency and competition. Now, let me connect all the dots for you, because this isn't about separate issues. This is about a systematic pattern of corruption that Democrats are desperately trying to protect.
And I went and visited with employees in the Health and Human Services in Minnesota. I went with the leadership. They're taking this seriously, I hope, although the actions still have not followed their words. But there are whistleblowers within the agency who say, we've been making noise about this for years and nothing was done.
Because the fraud was feeding the political machine, because the fraud was registering voters, because the fraud was making people like the AG rich off of campaign contributions. This is the swamp. This is what Trump is draining. And this is why Democrats are fighting so hard to stop him. America, Timmy Tampon Walz is demanding that you pay for the fraud crisis that he created. Keith Ellison testified under oath that $9 billion in fraud is, quote unquote, not a serious thing, while taking campaign cash from fraudsters. Vulnerable people like Sky are homeless because caregivers billed $421 a day for services that were only provided 2 hours while pocketing the rest. Democrats are blocking the SAVE Act because requiring proof of citizenship would expose the Medicaid-To-Voter pipeline. They're shutting down DHS to punish Trump, but ICE stays funded anyways. And while they protect corruption, Trump just launched Trump RX to save Americans billions on prescription drugs. The pattern is clear. Democrats create fraud, register the fraudsters to vote, take campaign cash, then demand taxpayers to pay for the damages. But the Trump administration is not backing down. The funding freeze is coming. The criminal indictments are coming. And the American people are finally seeing what the swamp really looks like. Let me know what you think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.